It's crossover Thursday, which means we're going to talk Steelers Raiders. We'll take a minute to honor and reflect upon the passing of Franco Harris, of course, his legendary tie to this rivalry. But we also got to talk about the matchups. Kenny Pickett looks like he's going to be coming back. Lots of injury questions for the Raiders. Breaking all of that down is myself, Chris Carter, host of Locked On Steelers, and your boy Q, host of Locked On Raiders. It's going to be a fun crossover Thursday episode. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast and Locked On Raiders podcast for crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Chris Carter. He's your boy Q, and we're breaking all things down Steelers Raiders for you all. You can find both of our shows on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you see this video on YouTube for either channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're a Steelers or a Raiders fan, so you can get all the daily episodes Monday through Friday, as well as any bonus content release. We thank you for making both of our podcasts your first listen every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, because they sponsor every crossover Thursday. Prize Picks is so much fun and easy to play. No competing against others, just you versus the projections available. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projections, you go up to 10 times your money on any entry. It literally takes less than 60 seconds to enter, and it's that easy. We love Prize Picks, and we know you will too. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKED ON. That's LOCKEDON. Locked On, all capital letters, all one word. That's prizepick.com. Locked On. All right, Q, how you doing, man?
Man, blessed. Excited about this matchup, man. Raiders, Steelers, 50th year anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. Franco Harris, we know that he passed on Wednesday morning. It was just incredible just to wake up to that news, knowing everything that was going on with them. But this is an old school rivalry. It's going to be cold there in Pittsburgh. Should be a fun game on Christmas Eve.
Q, for those who don't know, we are the Friday hosts of the Locked On NFL podcast. So Q and I talk weekly, and we're always messing with each other. But Q, one thing that you've always told me, and I think that some Steelers fans might not know this, is that there is a mutual respect from Raiders fans about Franco Harris over the years. He's not resented because he caught the Immaculate Reception, was part of the 70s Steelers. Over time, it's kind of become this thing where it's like, hey, we respect the heck out of that guy. It's what built the great rivalry that was.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was a really good dude. And the one time that I had an opportunity to meet him, it was at Super Bowl 54 in Miami, and had an opportunity to talk to him for about 10 to 15 minutes. And real great guy, great athlete, obviously, Hall of Famer, 4-time Super Bowl champion. The Raiders have a lot of respect for him. Phil Villapiano has a ton of respect for him. I mean, everyone in the Raiders organization does. Of course, the Raiders don't like the way that the whole play shook out, obviously. But it's just, it is what it is. It's one of the biggest plays in NFL history, so you can't really be mad at that at all. It's one of those that just will go down, again, as one of the greatest. So, yeah, always a ton of respect for Franco Harris, and honestly, ton of respect for the Pittsburgh Steelers in general.
I think it's a likewise situation that the Steelers recognize the rivalry that it is and what the Steelers and Raiders have done over the years. If you're a Steelers fan and you want my thoughts, you can catch on Franco Harris's passing. I did a whole bonus episode for Wednesday. I don't want to take up too much time of this episode recapping a lot of what I said there, but as I said in that episode, go check it out. It's on YouTube and all our audio platforms. But I talked about just why I didn't feel like it was enough. It would be enough to cram Franco Harris into an episode where we're talking about a matchup in the game and everything. So go check that out. Bonus episode I released Wednesday afternoon. My thoughts on Franco Harris and what he meant, not just to the Pittsburgh Steelers, not just to football, but to the world, and especially the city of Pittsburgh as a great person. But let's get into the top stories from each of these teams that are about the teams themselves. The thing for the Steelers right now, I think, is everyone's excited to see how Kenny Pickett plays coming into this game. He missed the last game, of course, and the half of the game but before because of a concussion he suffered against the Ravens, and it was more than half a game against the Ravens. It was really a second drive that he was pulled from the game after the hit that he suffered. He was in a concussion protocol. Mike Tomlin said he anticipates him to play. He practiced in full earlier on Wednesday, so he's been looking good for the Steelers, and now the Steelers are just wondering, what do they have to do to ease him back in? The Steelers ran the ball effectively against the Panthers. And in fact, since they've come out of the bye, they've had 4 games where they've rushed over 150 yards per game. And in those games, they've won all 4 of them. The 2 games that they've lost since the bye, the games that they don't rush for that amount. And I think it's that balance that has helped Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky last week kind of find that balance for them to win games. If they can establish that, I think that's the easiest way to help Kenny Pickett get his feet under him against a Raiders team that also is struggling to find some things right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And the thing about it is when a quarterback, especially a young quarterback, is trying to find himself in the NFL, his best friend is going to be the run game. Mm-hmm. And the Raiders gave up 170 plus yards to Ramondre Stevenson and the Patriots last week, right? And so normally, so far this year, they've done really well stopping the run. But on Sunday, for some reason, against the Patriots, they just were not very good at stopping the run. The only reason the Patriots stopped running is because the Patriots stopped running, right? I mean, they decided that they were going to throw the ball around the yard, which made no sense to me. But the Patriots were gashing the Raiders on the ground. That's going to be one of the biggest, areas to focus in on when you're watching this game. How is the Raiders defense stopping the run? How are they up against the run? Is Najee Harris going to have a big day? Is anyone else going to have a big day? Can Kenny Pickett use his legs to have a big day? I mean, I think one of the biggest keys in this game is going to be the Raiders, how effective they are in trying to stop the run. But if the Steelers could get rolling and rolling downhill, especially in the weather that's anticipated for Saturday, that could be a recipe for disaster for the Silver and Black.
It's expected to be in the single digits.
Absolutely cold.
Q's putting it that way. Like, we're kind of feeling it right now in Pittsburgh. Like, it's getting to be like it's in the low 20s at times. It's peaking back up. We survived with like some nice 50-degree weather through a lot of November. So now we're starting to pay for it. But the cold is definitely going to play a factor. And the run game for the Steelers, I think that's old school Pittsburgh, right? Like, they want to run the ball in the cold, make you feel it, tire you out, make you not like the elements there. And you're right. Before that Patriots game, the Raiders were on a roll. They hadn't allowed over 100 yards rushing to 4 straight opponents and were 3-1 in those games. The one loss was just a crazy night where Baker Mayfield comes out of nowhere and leads a last-minute drive there.
Yep.
And I think that's a huge matchup for this game is, can the Raiders defense make some stuff? But, Q, as I was looking at the Raiders injury report, there's a lot of guys on that side of the ball, on both sides of the ball, that are hurt up right now.
Yeah, no, there are. And really the biggest factor I look at is the offensive line. They've got multiple guys. Alex Bars, he's been out. He left a couple weeks ago with a knee injury. He didn't return. Dylan Parham, the 3rd-round pick out of Memphis, he's been playing really well for the Raiders all year on the offensive line. He left in the last game and didn't return with a knee injury. They got multiple guys that are out, man. They've got a lot of guys banged up that are key contributors. So that's going to be interesting. But, if the Raiders, they want to run the ball too. Let's make no mistake about it. I mean, the way that Pittsburgh wants to run the ball, the Raiders want to run the ball as well, but they've got to have the dogs up front to be able to get it done. And so with Alex Bars being out, and it looks like he'll probably be out again. I mean, I don't know that 100%, but it just gut feeling tells me he's going to be out again. And, Dylan Parham, who knows if he's going to play, he's going to be a big-time contributor. If he's gone, then all of a sudden that's a problem. You look at Jordan Meredith. He's a guy that slid into Dylan Parham's spot. He wasn't even on the roster a couple weeks ago. And then you got Hronis Grasu, who was on the practice squad in IR earlier in the season. So he's out there. So the guards are pretty suspect right now for the Silver and Black. So they really need to get as healthy as possible, but it's hard to do that coming up on a short week.
Absolutely. We'll talk more about that because I agree with Q. A huge part of this game is Josh Jacobs, who Mike Tomlin called the best runner in football when he talked about him on Tuesday during his press conference this week. We'll get into that in just a minute here on Crossover Thursday between the Steelers and the Raiders. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Audible. And Audible has a new slate of football podcasts that we're sure you're going to love. And we're going to show you there's a sneak peek of one of their new podcasts called The League that's on Locked On NFL right now. It's narrated by Super Bowl champion and legendary smack talker Richard Sherman and sports broadcaster and rising star Taylor Rooks. The League is an 8-part docuseries about the most bizarre, inspirational, and unlikely stories connected to America's favorite sport, pro football. You don't want to miss these untold stories spanning from the 1940s through the present. Our bonus episode is called The Way of the Cowboy, looking into the 1977 Dallas Cowboys that brought Bruce Lee's protege to teach defensive martial arts and usher in a new approach to NFL training. Head over to Locked On NFL for a bonus episode of The League or catch the full series wherever you get your podcast, available now. Audible, get in the game. Back here on Crossover Thursday here in the Locked On Podcast Network. It's Locked On Steelers meets Locked On Raiders. Chris Carter, your boy Q, breaking things down here on this big matchup. Q, you alluded to this point in the last segment, but the Raiders' run game is so big for a lot of their wins. And I broke this down in my keys to the game on the Locked On NFL channels, game to game, when they're breaking down all the matchups every week. But when I was looking back at this game, because one thing I think the Raiders could crush the Steelers if they hit on all cylinders is you got Josh Jacobs, who leads the NFL in rushing, and you got Davante Adams, arguably the best receiver in football. If both of those guys are hitting, the Steelers are done for. That can't. But what I noticed about the Raiders in their wins and losses is there's a disparity with one of their numbers. Now, Davante Adams does have better yards numbers in the Raiders wins. And when the Raiders 6 wins, he has 102.7 yards per game, 4 touchdown receptions. But in the Raiders losses, 82.4 yards per game in those 8 losses and 8 touchdowns. So twice as many touchdowns, but only about 20-ish less yards per game. So seems like kind of a wash. Like he's productive in whatever environment you put him in, and that doesn't have a big impact on the Raiders' chances. He's just going to get his numbers and eat. And Mike Tomlin said as much when I asked, how are they going to stop him? But Josh Jacobs' numbers are different. In the Raiders' wins, he's averaging 143.7 yards per game and has 8 touchdowns in those wins. In the Raiders' losses, he's averaging less than 80 yards per game, has only 3 touchdowns. So what that tells me, Q, is if you're the Steelers, you do what you can to limit Davante Adams. You do what you can to minimize him from crushing you. But the key is to make sure Josh Jacobs isn't eating. He's going to get his numbers a little bit, but keep him under, like, around that 80-yard threshold. Don't let him get in control of the game and get them so many first downs and make life easier for Derek Carr. You limit him, you'll be able to try to make the Raiders look a little bit one-dimensional, and you can make this a matchup the Steelers can hang with them.
Right. And the thing is, if you get on top of the Raiders early and then all of a sudden they're not able to go to Josh Jacobs, early and often, right? They all of a sudden turn into a passing team. Then they become one-dimensional. That's the biggest key, right? I mean, you're absolutely right about the yardage and how it is when Josh Jacobs is running for big-time yardage. And that guy has been the engine that made everything go for the Raiders. It's been a really good 1-2 punch with Josh Jacobs and Davante Adams. And look, the Raiders didn't really know. I don't think they knew who their identity was early in the season. They were trying to figure it out. Is it a heavy dose of Davante Adams? Is it, let's go to Darren Waller? Is it, let's go to Hunter Renfrow? Let's feed Josh Jacobs. They didn't really know. Then they lost Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow for a while. They both went on IR, and you really saw Josh Jacobs come into his own and become the guy he is as he's leading the league in rushing right now, and it's not even close. I mean, he's up by a couple hundred yards on Derrick Henry, who's in number 2 right now. So I think that they want to continue to go as Josh Jacobs goes, but the problem is if they get down a couple touchdowns or they get down 10 to 12 points early, then all of a sudden the game plan changes a little bit. So again, I don't really think that they've established their identity 100%, because depending on what happens, all of a sudden they decide that they have to change things. Because personally, if it's me and they get down 14, I'm still running the ball because I feel like I can still score. I feel like I can still get caught up quick, fast, and hurry. But they seem to get down 10 to 14 points like, okay, throw. Saturday, I don't think that that's going to be something that's going to be possible. I think Josh Jacobs is going to have to eat. I think that offensive line is going to have to block really well. I think the Raiders are going to have to possess the ball for a long time, and I know that's not going to be easy, right? The Pittsburgh Steelers have some really good guys on that defensive line.
Yeah.
Cam Hayward, other guys that can stop the run and get to the quarterback. So it's going to be tough sledding for the Raiders, but that's how they want to butter their bread. They want to get Josh Jacobs rolling. They want to get him over 100-plus yards. They wanted to get him at least 20-plus carries. I mean, that's what they want to do. Can they do it? Well, that question is remained to be answered.
If this was the Steelers team earlier in the season, I think that the Raiders could have rolled the Steelers very easily, because I think that the Steelers struggled with holding on to the ball. After their first 4 games, the Steelers ranked next to last in NFL time of possession because they didn't run the ball well. When they tried to throw the ball, it wasn't efficient, and they would hit on some big plays here or there, but that was about it, and they were next to last. Now they're 7th in the NFL in time of possession. They went from averaging 25 minutes and 42 seconds per game with the ball to averaging 31 minutes and 1 second. That's ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs. Wow. So that's what that's what Mike Tomlin has been preaching, that this team has to do. hold on to the football, possess it, keep your defense off the field. The Raiders, they've been right in the middle part of the league this year. Not bad at 30 minutes and 7 seconds is their average now. Back at that same mark when the Steelers when the Steelers were next to last, the Raiders were 16th in the league with 30 minutes and 18 seconds. So the Raiders have kind of been at that same level all year. But I do think what you're saying is very much true. And I think this is the recipe that the Steelers have needed to win a lot of their recent games is get up on teams, control the football, run the football, and then let your quarterback kind of manage the game, whether it's Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, and it will be Kenny Pickett this weekend. Then you're not asking them to do much. And then the defense can say, hey, eventually they do have to get aggressive because they're down 7, 8, 9, 10 points. And we can kind of put them into more predictable situations.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why it's going to be interesting. And again, I was very surprised and shocked when the Raiders gave up so many yards on the ground to the Patriots last week.
Yeah.
And I even asked defensive coordinator Patrick Graham, like, hey, you looked at the film. What did you see? And he said, I saw a lot of things we need to clean up before we play the Steelers. I mean, that was his answer, right? There's a lot of things we need to clean up before we play the Steelers because they want to butter their bread by the ground game. They want Najee Harris to have a big day. They want to be able to control the clock. Just like you mentioned, Mike Tomlin has said, I want my guys to be physical up front. I want to dominate the line of scrimmage. Well, if they could do that, it's going to be a long day at the office for the Raiders. And again, I don't know what the passing conditions are going to be like. I really don't.
Yeah.
With the weather, I mean, until we actually see it, we can anticipate what it's going to be like. Last week we were talking about the Bills and Miami, how it's going to be a snowstorm the whole game. It wasn't. It wasn't until the end. So we don't really know what the weather's going to look like. We anticipate it being bad, but it might be a scenario where the passing game is just not effective. Yeah. And you might have to be the best team on the ground to win this game. And so both teams, I mean, it's the beautiful thing about this game, Chris, is that it's typical old school football game. And why wouldn't it be for the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, right? Two teams, historic teams that love to slug it out, get down and dirty, run the rock, the storylines, they write themselves. So that's what I'm excited about for this game. But I feel like these teams are very similar matched up. Raiders have more talent on paper, but can they execute it is the big question.
That's a big question. I also think similarly, both teams' defensive fronts are better than their offensive fronts. You were talking about how the Raiders' offensive line, Dylan Parham and Alex Bars looks like they're not going to play, and they're going to need guys to really step up there. But at the same time, the Steelers' offensive line, they're healthy, but they've been up and down this year. Mason Cole and James Daniels, I think, have been the best additions as veterans in the middle. But Kevin Dotson, 1 week he's really good, 1 week he's really bad. And he was really good last week, so who knows how it'll be. Dan Moore Jr., the left tackle, so as well. Chuma Okorafor usually pretty steady at right tackle, but that's not if they dominate, it's a really good day and the Steelers usually win. If they don't, that's when the Steelers struggle a lot. But on the flip side, just like the Raiders, the Steelers got defensive front guys. For Cam Hayward, you got a Chandler Jones. For TJ Watt, Max Crosby. For Larry Ogunjobi, Andrew Billings, though he's been hurt for the Raiders, so that's another point against them. But you see what I'm saying? Like, both defensive fronts can try to take over this game to kind of limit the other side.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's why it's going to be so interesting. I swear that these teams are very similar, right? Mm-hmm. And their records are very similar. So, I mean,
they're 6-8.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so many similarities. Of course, it's on the road for the Raiders. It's a home game for the Steelers. It's going to be cold. It's going to be nasty. 50-year anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. So many storylines. They write themselves. I mean, this is going to be it's prime time, Christmas Eve. I mean, what else do you want, right? I mean, there's really nothing else you can get except for like a partridge in a pear tree, right? I mean, that's really all. And I don't think there's any pear trees around the stadium. I don't know. I've been there once, but I never saw a pear tree. I'm just saying.
There's no pear trees on the North Shore of Pittsburgh. But we'll get more into the things that will happen on that night as we continue breaking this matchup down. So don't go anywhere from Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. But before we do any more of that, we got to talk to you guys about BetOnline.net. BetOnline, your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Head out to find out all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including the NFL season that gets ever so closer to the playoffs. You got the NBA, you got the NHL. You had the World Cup for a while. That's gone now. But don't worry. They have all sorts of sports for you to bet on and to learn about by going to BetOnline. They also have podcasts just like these that break down all the betting odds and ends that you need. So go to BetOnline, your continued source for all your sports wagering information. They have live betting, playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more of the trends in the action when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. We're also brought to you today by the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks, but a few becomes too many. And as the evening comes to an end, people start to head out and you think of calling for a ride. But no, you decide, well, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds that you're going to get pulled over? And even if so, what's the worst that's going to happen? Does your insurance go up? You might lose your license. You might lose your job. You could total your car. You could kill somebody. You hear the point there. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel under the influence. That's why police officers out there right now are looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. And when we do back-to-back ad reads on the Locked On Podcast Network, we keep it rolling. So, Q, let's keep it rolling into this matchup.
All right.
Well, let's talk about how this game could flow. I gotta be honest. I was ready to pick the Steelers to lose this week just because I look at Josh Jacobs and Davante Adams as a 1-2 punch that just I think messes them up in a lot of ways. But man, Franco Harris is passing.
Yeah,
like you hear them talking about it, like how Cam Hayward's fired up about it. Pat Fryman, we've talked about how we're both Penn Staters, and that man announced me, coming in and loved me as soon as I got here. Yeah. And Kenny Pickett talked about he announced me, and I'm a Pitt guy, and he showed love for me. And Najee Harris is like when I got in, we talked about how we're both Harris guys, and we're trying to, he had a lot of hope and respect for me, and it made me love that guy. The Steelers, I think, are going to be another level of focused for this game. And there's going to be so much fanfare. I fully predict the Steelers to carry his jersey out onto the field, be wearing a lot of 32 insignia. There's going to be all sorts of honoring. I think the crowd's going to be amped up for it. I think Franco Harris's passing is going to put a charge into the Steelers. And I know that's not film. That's not analysis. It's not something PFF can put a stat on, right?
No.
But I think it's very real and tangible about how I think the Steelers could come out fired up about this game and play with a passion that puts the Raiders, I think, a little bit on edge.
Oh, I have no doubt about it, right? I mean, you go back and look at the Raiders season. They faced Jeff Saturday the first time that he was the head coach, lost. Faced Baker Mayfield first time he was a Ram after 2 days of being on the team, lost. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, there's a great chance that this Franco Harris passing has a very negative effect on the Raiders and the outcome of this game. I mean, and this is funny. This is one of the first things I thought of when he passed. And, of course, the most important thing is not the game and the outcome of the game. When someone passes, obviously the most important thing is that life, that person, and that family. And that's what I want to try to keep in the forethought. Like, okay, this is what's really important, not really the results of the game. But with that being said, one of the first things I thought of was like, oh, those guys are going to be amped up to play now. They're going to be amped up. And I related it to when the Raiders, when Al Davis died and the Raiders were playing the Texans the very next day. I remember I woke up on that Saturday to the news that Al Davis passed. The Raiders went into Houston and won that very next game the very next day. And they only had 10 guys on the field. And somehow Matt Schaub threw an interception to Michael Huff in the end zone that could have won it for the Texans. But Michael Huff came away with the interception, and there was only 10 guys on the field. So to me, I was like, that was Al Davis on the field. And I know that that's in our minds as sports guys and sports fans and this, that, and the other. But I do think it plays a little bit of a role. And I know, and Mike Tomlin, you talk to him all the time. You think he's not going to have a hell of a speech lined up for those guys on Saturday? He's going to give. I mean, look, the guy can get in a car accident and have a great speech lined up. So he's going to have a rah-rah speech ready to go to get those guys fired up. I don't know if it's sustainable for the whole game, but I feel like they're going to come out of the locker room on fire.
And that's the thing is that I often say that too, is that like fired up and being excited goes away. Right. But if you're a team that is good enough to start hot and to feel, that's what the Steelers need to win. And that's why I think it could actually have a big impact on this game. When the Steelers get leads, they've been able to hold on to them, especially of late. They've been able and like you look back at their win over the Falcons, their win over the Colts. And yes, these aren't good teams, but frankly, neither are the Steelers or the Raiders. And when they've been able to get leads, even when those teams have come surging back a little bit, the Steelers have been able to hold on and say, hey, we can now play our brand of football. We're not built to come back from behind too much this year because we got a rookie quarterback, makeshift offensive line, and we've been building an offensive identity. But I think they're finding their offensive identity as a run team that can throw some of the times and make things easier for Kenny Pickett, throwing the ball. So that's why I do think, as silly as it might sound, I'm sure there's going to be people that are laughing this off. Like, really, these guys think that, a guy that hasn't played in, 50 years is going to actually impact this game. I'm telling you.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, exactly. I'm telling you that stuff does have an impact here.
Yep.
So I look at that and I didn't even think about the aspect of the Raiders, the Jeff Saturday game or the Baker Mayfield game, but you're right. Those were two instances. And frankly, I picked them to win both of those games.
Right. They should have won both of those. There's no reason they should have lost. That was the only game that Jeff Saturday and the Colts won.
Yep.
Was his very first game out. And Baker Mayfield, you saw what he was last week. You saw him. You saw him when he was playing for the Browns. Yep. There's no reason that he went into LA, didn't even have a chance to really open up the playbook and go out there and beat the Raiders, but he did. So it's something to be said about, I don't want to say, like things that happen suddenly, but kind of things that happen suddenly, right? All of a sudden, this is a change in what's going on with the organization, team, or whatever. And sometimes guys are just able to ride that momentum, ride that wave, whatever you want to call it. I don't really have an explanation for it, but I know it happens. And so I think that it's going to be a tough one. And really, honestly, for the Raiders to win the game, I think they're going to have to weather the storm. It's almost like in a boxing match, right? You go in there and all of a sudden you get this flurry from a boxer in round one, maybe even round two as well. But you've got to keep your breath. You got to keep your cardio. You got to be able to get your legs back and say, okay, that's what you got. Cool. Now I've weathered the storm. Now let me show you what I got. The Raiders are going to have to do that to win this game on Saturday.
I hear that. I agree entirely. I think they're going to have to do that. And I think that's absolutely part of it is, making sure that your lows aren't that low. If, for example, if the Steelers come out on fire and the Raiders are only down 10,
right,
manageable.
Ride it out. You just got to ride that out. And as long as you can stay within striking range, you'll be okay. But you can't, once you get hit with the snowball, you can't crumble. If you crumble, then you're in trouble. And that's the thing. That's what the coaching staff has to look. These guys may come out on fire. Definitely got to hold our water, right? I mean, if you're the coaching staff, that's what you're telling the players, that, okay, it's going to be all right as long as you're able to hold your water and weather the storm. Now, if you crumble, it's lights out. It's over.
I agree. I think it's going to be a big thing there. What is the biggest thing that you're worried about the Raiders could mess up in this game? Outside of what we talked about with the run game that the Steelers might have, is there another aspect to their defense, to their offense, that scares you about this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in the trenches, and I think it's offensively and defensively in the trenches. I really do. I think that's the biggest key to this game. I think the offensive line is going to have their work cut out for them, trying to stop the Steelers' defensive line from getting to Derek Carr and harassing him all day long, and of course disrupting Josh Jacobs as well, because the offensive line is pretty banged up. I'm hoping Dylan Parham returns, but so far, I mean, he was, like I said, did not participate on Tuesday, limited on Wednesday. We'll see what happens today, and then we'll find out on Saturday if he's active or inactive. But my gut feeling tells me he's not going to play. My gut feeling tells me Alex Barr is not going to play. So that means that they're going to be down to Jordan Meredith again and Hronis Grasu at the guard position. I think that's a recipe for disaster. As you know, the Steelers could get after the quarterback in a major way. So that's a concern. And then defensively, have they fixed the mistakes that allow the Patriots to run all over them? If they have, then great. If not, they could be in for a long day at the office because, man, the Steelers are going to try to butter their bread by way of the ground. And if the Raiders can't stop it, what's going to stop them from doing it? The Steelers aren't the Patriots. They're not going to say, hey, you know what? This is successful. Let's stop doing it. That's what the Patriots did. The Steelers are going to try to continue to run the ball as long as they're having success. And so the trenches are what concerns me the most about this game.
I think that's certainly a great point there. How is Derek Carr right now with the team? Like, we talk about Davante Adams and Josh Jacobs a lot, but he's the quarterback. He's the veteran that they brought Davante Adams to work with him. What's he been like right now?
I mean, he's done well enough. He hasn't been great. He's not elite. He's not going to be elite, but I mean, he's been good enough. He has moments where he really does well. when he's not thinking. I think when he's in like a 2-minute offense, when he's trying to come from behind, when he's trying to score right before halftime, he's really good at just go, go, go. But when it's, when it's the middle of the game and there's not a lot of, pressure as far as the clock goes, and, he kind of doesn't, I don't want to say takes his foot off the gas, but he's not really quite the same guy. So, I mean, he's good enough. He's good enough to get it done. I'll be interested to see how he is in this weather, because traditionally he's not a great cold weather quarterback, but he's had moments where he's played really well in the cold. So he's kind of shaking that a little bit, that narrative off a little bit. But I mean, he's good enough to win the game. Let's put it like that. But again, the offensive line has got to protect him. If not, if he's running for his life, it's going to be a long day at the office. And if they can't get the run game going, long day at the office. Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, they returned last week, so that's good. It's extra weapons out there on the field, even though they might not be 100% like effective and know the playbook yet. Just them being out there is a bigger deal than not having them out there. So we'll see. Darren Waller's been off a little bit as far as, running his routes, not really knowing where he's supposed to be. But if he can start to, learn the playbook a little bit more, I think he'll be all right. So I think DC will be okay. It's just that offensive line's got to protect him.
We'll see if that offensive line does protect him. Saturday night, Acrisure Stadium in Pittsburgh, Christmas Eve.
Heinz Field, baby. Heinz Field.
There you go. You could say that. Look, Q's already part of Steeler Nation. I'm so proud of you.
No such thing.
I had to get one of those in, baby.
No such thing.
There isn't such thing.
No, it's not. What's funny about that? I let a guy on the radio on Wednesday on my radio show. He said that, but we were talking about Franco Harris. So out of respect, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to correct him, because we're talking about Franco Harris. We're talking about a guy that passed away. So I don't feel like being petty. But I'll be petty with you. You ain't worth the salt.
You.
You ain't worth the salt anyway.
I'm not worth the what?
You're not worth the salt.
Oh, that's so messed up. We're like bros, man.
I know, but you're still not worth the salt. I mean, everybody has a homeboy that they know ain't worth the salt. That's you. You're my homeboy. How
am I not worth the salt?
Cool. You're my homeboy. I'd ride with you at all times, but you still ain't worth the salt. Just saying.
When you came to Pittsburgh last year, I took you to the William Penn Tavern, had you kitchen sink wings. We drank on my porch. We had a great time. Yeah. And now you ain't just.
You're my guy. No, you're a good guy. You're my homeboy. Love you to death, but you still ain't worth the salt.
See, this is the kind of interactions you'll get if you listen to the Friday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. So check us out there. We're there every Friday, every week, unless we have some schedule mix up. Both of us are busy people. But Q, it's always fun doing this show with you, man. I'm glad we got to do a crossover Thursday. I hope we get to do another one next year. But I will talk to you for the Friday episode. So check us out there, Locked On NFL Friday. But we also will have both of our episodes coming out for the Friday episode. So check out Locked On Raiders, Locked On Steelers, both in the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find all of our episodes just like you can find Locked On NFL Podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, YouTube. Like the video if you saw this video anywhere. Subscribe to either of our YouTube channels to get all the daily Steelers or Raiders content that you could want, that we're breaking things down on our podcast. Thanks again to Q for joining me. We're Chris Carter, and we're your boy Q, back Friday with final predictions and breakdowns for Steelers Raiders going into Christmas Eve.
Rest in peace, friend.